now we have back on the bench, after its first run, the Rising Fighter, or the Frankenstein buggy. I've put the battery in for the next part because I'm going to do the shocks, but if you just look at it, you bounce the rear, there is minimum movement on the rear, and the front, I don't think they move. They barely move. The same springs are fitted to the front as the rear, but they're so compressed up, it's unbelievable. Now, as it comes to the shocks, these are quite cheap and that's why I buy them, but I've gone for the DTO-free CVA damper set. They're 22 quid. You get everything you need, and you sort of make them to fit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the front ones, and the only shame is in the manual these are not one-to-one, so ignore the sizes, but it says you want damper length 64. Well, I'm going to take it 64 probably as between the holes, and that'll be the size I'm going for. And then the rear is 80. So the rear uses a short, the front uses a longer on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mock a shock up and we'll see how long it is. Now there's the stock shock, and here's a mock up of the front ones, and they are longer. So what we've got to do now is measure between the eyes. Now it said 64, which we will go with. But if we look at the standard, it's about 61 or 61 and a half, and this one with the long is 70. So they're saying 64, so all we can do is add the 5mm spacer, and that will be as near as I can get it. I'm not going to go any closer because I'm going to allow for that the spring might sag a little bit, because the springs are quite small on these. So we use the part V2 to do this, and I'm sure it is about 5. Actually it's 6, so that will give us 64. So they are allowing on using this shock set in a sense. So we'll put that in. Put the base on again. And we should be near to 64 on the centres. Actually we get 62, which is exactly the length of. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to build the shocks up with the stock springs and see what they look like. The shocks are done, one's on. Where these normally you have to use collars to tension the springs, if you look it's longer than, so there might be enough tension without adding any more preload. There you go. But size wise to the original, it's absolutely identical, or as near as, so I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll get it back on. The usual problem is trying to get this first screw in on the lower without the tube falling out. So what, I'll push it past again and then slide it into place. It's very hard to show it on camera. There we go. That one's in. Just the upper to do, which should in theory be quite simple. And there we go. Has it made any difference? Let's zoom out a little bit. Oh wow. I think that's a big yes. It now takes the impact. If it needs any more, we can always add a bit more preload. But I think height fit's going to be alright. That's the lowest it goes. But like I said, until I drive it, I'm not going to add any more spacers or anything, so we can make that decision. Now let's get to looking at the rear. Now I've put the shock together with the longer eye because I prefer them on them, and as you can guess, it's too long, and there is a lot of looseness with the spring. So there was a reason why I'd done it, so I can do this. Is put that tube on the same like I did on the front. That will add auto preload, because again they say use the stock spring, and I'm not doing that because we know it's not good. And this, like I said, should give it a slight preload, and it shouldn't be too far off size wise. And I'll tell you what, I'm dropping everything today. All fingers and thumbs, or in my case thumbs, thumbs and thumbs. Yeah, it's slightly longer if you look. But I'm kind of okay with that, because I think it will squat down a bit anyway. So I'm going to use it in this configuration a bit longer. Because they said 80, didn't they? Let's have a look. Where's me calipers? They said 80, didn't they? Huh. Well, they say a lot shorter than this, and even the stock one is greater than 80, so I would ignore their measurements and go by what's fitted. But against those, I'm going to try it with these, because I think, like I said, if it needs any, it's like I said, it's just on preload this is, so I don't think it needs any more, so I'm going to take a chance and do that. Well, the front worked, but the rear, really stiff. I'm going to swap these springs on and see if they make any difference. Now, there was too much slack in the springs, so I've quickly designed some collars. They slide on nice, the spring goes on, and that is a loose fit. But I think I might change the oil in the shock absorbers. I'm going to get these both on and we'll see how well they do. If not, it'll be oil out and in. Well, I fitted the softer springs and it just seems it moves, but not as nicely as the front. So what I'm thinking to do is I'm going to change the oil out and see if that improves it a little bit. Well, there we go. We have now got this very thin oil in the back. It says 100. So how well does it do? I don't know. It does move. It's got more return than the front on the rear. But it's definitely a lot thinner oil. Those springs which came with the kit are too tough. You know, because they're the stock springs, they're the same size, you wouldn't believe it. That's how much compression they put on the front springs. Basically, to build it is just build the shocks, they come with metal pistons, so you haven't got to worry about all these settings. And then all you've got to do is use the tube it's got, the longer of the tube, which is on the sprues on each one. That shortens the shocks down to the amount I liked. The front, it got it to perfect. The rear, it was so I could use the longer of the rear things, the rear shock bottoms. The only other thing is, like I said, using the stock springs, to get them to fit nice, I printed off these 8mm collars. I quickly knocked up on on CAD. They're a nice fit. They don't fit too tight, but they just hold the spring on to the thing. But there is movement in the rear and not so much return in the front, but that will be fine, because it will, as it runs forwards, you compress it, as you push forwards it should rise up a bit itself. If it needs a bit of preload, it can be done, but it doesn't bounce, it doesn't boing. But like I said, using these DTO3s, they're not bad. They work with it, but to do what they say in the book, they don't say what oil, and I'm pretty certain the standard Tamiya oil is about, I don't know if it says in here, let's have a look on the parts list. I think it's about 300. Yeah, it just doesn't say on that. I don't know, I've got something around that shows it, but I'm not going to worry about it. All I know is, like I said, I've reduced the spring rate and got rid of the pogo sticks. Next is to give it a little run, and hopefully it doesn't bounce around like it did previously. But that's the first mod, oil shocks.